Come on in. Welcome to Idled Out, where we talk all things Survivor. My name is Luke, and today we're talking about every single Survivor player who did not get a confessional in their boot episode. It's a rare club, and not one you want to be in when your Survivor story ends and you don't even get to give your point of view on it. Heck, even Purple Kelly got a confessional in the episode in which she quit. I mean, it was this, but still.
I've been sucking it up for 28 days. I have nothing left to suck.
Hey, I never said it was good. So today, I thought it'd be fun to go through every single Survivor player who left the game without giving a confessional in their boot episode. From players you barely remember, to those who were unexpectedly evacuated, to a handful of Survivor legends who bafflingly left the game without one last confessional. Along the way, I'll give my speculation as to why these players in particular didn't get a confessional in their boot episode. Sometimes it's obvious, even understandable. Sometimes it is truly head-scratching. Finally, I am defining boot episode as the episode they were voted out of, medically evacuated from, quit, or otherwise left the game proper. We're not counting episodes in which players lost a Redemption Island duel or left the edge of extinction as their boot episode. And also, when we're talking confessionals in the game, not the standard confessional everyone gets after they've been voted out. Well, almost everyone. Which Survivor players didn't get a confessional in their boot episode, and why? Let's find out. The first player in Survivor history to not receive a confessional in the episode they left the game is Kim Powers in Survivor Africa. Honestly, this one surprised me a little bit, but upon revisiting the episode, it is simply overstuffed with too many other things going on. First, they watch tapes from home, then Lex and Tom do their safari reward, then there's an immunity challenge, and by the time we get to anything else, oops, we're 40 minutes in and it's time for Tribal Council. Well, I'm sure if Lex or T-Bird actually left the show in this episode, they would have gotten a confessional for sure. Kim is more a victim of circumstance here than anything. Big personalities on a big reward. Not much time left for little Kim. The next player to not receive a confessional in their boot is Erin in Survivor Thailand. Erin wasn't exactly bursting off the screen, and she was one of the first twist-screwed players, this time by the fake merge. And players who are victims of twists are often under-edited so that we, the audience, won't be super upset when they leave. But this entire episode is a swan song for the Sukjai tribe as they lose immunity and spend the next 15 minutes crying about it. So it is pretty surprising that the member of this tribe, who we are ostensibly supposed to be crestfallen over, doesn't get a ton this episode. I mean, I'm in mourning, but mostly that I'm about to have a lot more Chewy-Gon in my life. Oh hallelujah, the next player on our list is Joanna from Survivor Amazon. Joanna was edited down to a one-note Bible thumper who just screamed hallelujah all the time. Like, at least 20% of her screen time is the word hallelujah. After Janet left, she was by far the least important player narratively on Jabiru, and even in her own boot episode, she's mostly left on the cutting room floor. Her elimination used to further other, more important storylines. Dina's strategic ascendance, Shauna wanting to quit, and the burden Jenna and Heidi face for being so hot. I don't know. Maybe if she'd prayed harder, the editing gods would have given her a confessional.
Hallelujah! Oh, glory!
We didn't get another zero confessional boot episode until Survivor Guatemala, 5 seasons later, with Morgan in episode 2. Magician assistant Morgan couldn't conjure up a confessional this episode, which was primarily focused on whether Morgan's challenge strength outweighed her laziness at camp. Morgan got pretty much nothing this episode, probably because the alternate boot target was Lydia, who made the final 4, and she was saved in an early post-immunity scramble by Brian, the strategic heir apparent to Rob Sesternino. Still, I think there was plenty of space in the story to at least give Morgan something here, rather than zero confessionals and a one-note lazy edit. The first 30 minutes of this episode are pretty sleepy. Much like Morgan, actually. Welcome to the Survivor Cook Islands portion of the video. Cecilia is one of the many players this season who got next to nothing in the edit, probably because Survivor was still learning how to balance editing a 20-person season. This season's pre-merge is full of players who got nothing and who no one remembers, and also Billy and Cowboy. The episode Cecilia went out was also the tribe swap, where they had to establish new dynamics that were very important to the rest of the season, like the I-24 and Penner's flip-floppiness. Cecilia is someone who I think had a lot of potential. She was taken out precisely because she was such a threat compared to her allies, but her entire story is basically non-existent, especially this episode, because of those early editing growing pains. 13 seasons in, we reached the first man to exit the show without getting a confessional in his boot episode, Brad in Survivor Cook Islands. Brad was the first of several Raro players booted over Penner after he mutinied, and Brad is hardly even in this episode until he's brought up as a boot target because he might flip at the merge, as opposed to Jonathan, who would never flip. Again, Brad is barely there and only ever shown situationally to set up his boot. And again, he gets very little because I think they were still figuring out how to edit those 20-person seasons. The final Cook Islands player on this list is Rebecca. Rebecca is definitely in the under-edited Hall of Fame. Not invisible enough to be ironically iconic, not visible enough to be memorable. I can almost guarantee you that you completely forgot this person existed until I mentioned her moments ago. I hate to be a broken record, but like Cecilia, Brad, and many other Cook Islands alumni, Rebecca's lousy edit was a result of an oversized, top-heavy cast. And because of the surprise double boot when Jenny goes out right after her, Rebecca also became the first player to be voted out and not to receive her final words playing over the credits, which instead went to Jenny in one final twist of the editing knife. Let's move along to the next season with Rita from Survivor Fiji. This one actually surprised me. While Rita wasn't super visible before her boot, I remembered her having plenty of content in the episode, which she actually does. It's just all from Rocky's point of view about how annoyed he is by her. While I'll always advocate that everyone get at least one confessional in their elimination episode, they got the story across of why Rita went home well enough without giving her a confessional. So this one can get a pass, though I do wish we zoomed the camera out just a little. Let's go forward a few seasons to Yao Man in Survivor Micronesia. In a cast of cannon fodder newbies and some questionable favorites, Yao Man being the only player to leave without a confessional in his boot in this season is pretty surprising. But upon revisit, we got enough of the Yao Man experience, the cute MacGyver-y old guy in the first episode, and the post-tribal scramble in episode 3 has very few confessionals at all, and instead focuses on Penner and Parvati's alliances jockeying for Cerie's loyalty. Yao Man was an early casualty of a war of more important characters in the storyline, and his lack of edit in his boot episode reflects that. Moving along, the next player not to get a confessional in their boot episode is another returnee, Courtney in Survivor Heroes vs. Villains. This one is just criminal. Whichever editors and producers made the decision to only give Courtney 4 confessionals this season and none in the episode she leaves the game need to see jail time. For legal reasons, that's a joke. Courtney was otherwise moderately present in the episode, and her screen time had ramped up the last 3 episodes, but ultimately she was jockeying for screen time against Russell in the midst of Hans Mania. That is a losing fight. The next Heroes vs. Villains player on our list is Candace. Candace was the first boot in a double boot episode, so she already only had half the screen time to get a confessional. And honestly, I feel like the show was kind of mad that Candace enabled the villains to pagong the heroes the prior round by heroically flipping. Her punishment? A quiet boot episode where her main content is Rupert and Colby complaining about her. Hey, fair is fair. The next player to get 0 confessionals in their boot is Keith in Survivor South Pacific. This was the merge episode, where the main tension of the narrative was whether or not Cochran was going to flip on his tribe. I feel like we got enough of Keith even without directly hearing his perspective on things, and his elimination thanks to Cochran's flip is both understandable and explained because they gave him plenty of content in this and past episodes of him treating Cochran like total shit. And as a water treatment tech, he knows a little something about treating shit. The next player to get 0 confessionals in their boot is Leaf in Survivor One World. Leaf got 4 confessionals in 10 episodes in One World. I'm just gonna play one of the confessionals in here as an explanation as to why he got nothing on the show.
When we first got to this amazing, beautiful 7-Up oasis, it was just shocking to see how it's seriously a resort.
Wow, truly one of the confessional givers of all time. The next player on our list is Michael in Survivor Caramoan. This is one of the more egregious, in my opinion. Michael was one of the main players on the fans tribe, and though he was basically out of options at the merge once Corinne was gone and was more or less collateral damage in the war between Stealth RS and the three amigos, he was still a main player in the first half of the game and at least deserved some sort of confessional in the episode he left the game. Turkeys.
You turkeys.
Would you believe that Survivor Caramoan has multiple players who left without a confessional in their exit episode? I know, I was shocked this sterling season with its very even and complex edit would commit this editing sin. Granted, I'm gonna actually give this one a pass and say it's pretty fair because Eric was medically evacuated at the very beginning of the finale, and it's not like he was doing much this season anyway. The next person on our list is Katie in Survivor Blood vs. Water. Katie didn't get a ton of content on the show at all, and while I think part of that is that she really didn't seem like she wanted to be there, I think part of it is also the manner in which she left the game. Katie became the second person ever eliminated by random rock draw after the tribe failed to reach a consensus at the final 6, and as I said earlier, players who go out in controversial ways are often but not always buried in the edit, especially on their boot. So I'm going to chalk this one up to her simply grabbing the wrong colored rock out of a sack. Despite being one of the most well-edited seasons in my opinion, Survivor Juan Del Sur didn't give Wes a confessional in his boot episode. Wes didn't get a lot of confessionals, but he was really funny around camp and at challenges, which is where he shines, and we actually get plenty of Wes content this episode from him. This is the episode where he asks Jeff about being naked on 2.5 Men and proudly declares he ate 58 chicken nuggets in 5 minutes.
I ate 58 chicken nuggets in 5 minutes on the eating contest once. What?
You ate how many whats and one what?
58 chicken nuggets in 5 minutes.
Wes was also the victim of not one, but 2 idol plays, including one from his father. So that may also factor into his lack of confessionals this episode. Wes was at his peak when he was bantering with others rather than privately narrating his own game, so this is fine. The next person to get 0 confessionals in their elimination episode is Terry in Survivor Cambodia, who was pulled from the game in episode 6 because his son was ill back home. Honestly, Terry didn't have much going on strategically at the time he left. They didn't want us to get super invested in him anyway, and we get all the context for his leaving the game in the scene where Jeff pulls him from it. So this is another one which I totally get. Next is Caleb in Survivor Rong. Again, this one makes sense to me. This episode essentially opens with the reward challenge, where Caleb has a heat stroke and is ultimately medically evacuated from the game. We didn't get any camp life before this challenge. The episode basically opens and goes straight to the reward, and Caleb's not around to give a confessional afterwards, because, you know, he was a little busy. Like Candace, Sunday got 0 confessionals when she was voted out in a double boot episode in Survivor Millennials vs. Gen X, though she was the second boot of the night. By this point, Adam, Hannah, Ken, and David had firm control over the game. So Sunday was a pretty obvious elimination because of the nature of 1-hour double boot episodes. These episodes are often mostly packed with strategy rather than character stuff, and Sunday was never really the person the editors went to give insights on strategy. Overall, this episode is doing a lot of table setting for the finale, setting up David and Jay as threats which have to be taken out, so it just wasn't Sunday's day of the week. RIP though, a truly bright light this season, and she was by all accounts as sweet off the show as she was on it. Next is JP in Survivor Heroes vs. Healers vs. Hustlers. JP's elimination was a momentous shift in the game against Chrissy and Ryan, and because those two survived and actually went to the final 3, they're given main narrative duties for this trio. However, another explanation could be JP ended every single sentence with the words "and things like that." From pre-game interviews to the show itself to his exit press, JP said "and things like that" after concluding any thought. When he gets married, he will probably say "I do" and things like that. So let's just say he wasn't super dynamic in the confessionals. And that, probably more than anything, is probably why he didn't get one in his boot episode. And things like that. The next player to receive 0 confessionals during their boot is B in Survivor David vs. Goliath. Surprisingly, shockingly even, B is the only quitter in Survivor history to not get a confessional in her exit. B had injured her knee in an earlier challenge and needed to quit to protect her MMA career, and the episode essentially opens with the tribes all gathering together. She quits, and then they immediately pivot to a tribe swap. We get all of the context we need to understand her quit from her explaining it to Jeff when she leaves, so I get it. But it still is pretty odd that B, who had a fairly sympathetic quit all things considered, is the only quitter in Survivor history with this dubious honor. Somewhere, Austin and Purple Kelly are high-fiving. Next is Joe in Survivor Edge of Extinction. Joe got hardly anything in the edit all season long, probably because he played the same loyalty-based, challenge-win-focused game for the 3rd time in a row, and was booted at his first tribal council. And considering he reportedly spent this insanely chaotic merge sitting around painting the tribe flag and not strategizing, it sounds like they probably didn't have much to work with anyway. This devious, mischievous cast photo is a straight-up lie. The final player in Survivor history thus far to not receive a confessional in their boot episode is Denise in Survivor Winners at War. Because of the pandemic, this finale was upgraded to 3 hours since there was no reunion, and poor Denise still got absolutely nothing in it. Was it the context in which Denise left? As a consensus boot after all the initial votes at the final 6 were negated by idols? Was it because the episode opened with a lengthy Edge of Extinction challenge? Was it because everyone else had compelling storylines going on and she had basically thrown in the towel episodes ago? Look, I love Denise, but I totally understand this one. This is the Survivor Super Bowl, and she'd played a passive post-merge game for weeks, and we all knew her story was over when she pontificated about getting tattoos that say, endure and let go, as a way to, well, endure and let go of Survivor 40. Should have gotten tattoos that said confessionals and screen type instead. That's it! Every single New Era player has received at least one confessional in their elimination episode, from A. Abraham to Z. Zachary. This is one of the things I most appreciate about the New Era, that very few players get completely sandbagged in the edit, and so far everyone has been able to give their perspective on something in their elimination episode. Now I want to know, who do you think would be here but wasn't? Which of these players deserved a confessional in their boot episode? And which of these players were you most surprised to see on this list? Let me know in the comments, but don't you dare say leave. Got nothing else for you. If you want to keep hearing my confessionals, like and subscribe and I'll get you more Survivor content just like this. Until next time, don't get idled out.